the main reason I wanted to talk to you is because we are both in our own ways trying to work on this kind of global cause of suffering that is in many ways much larger and much more neglected than probably most people realize. I think a lot of people, when I tell them that I'm trying to do something about the tobacco epidemic, they go, "Isn't that a problem of the past? You know, it seems like that was a big thing in the 90s, but now that's kind of taken care of." Maybe we can just sort of start by giving people a shared frame of reference of like, what is the problem we're talking about and why is it worth discussing and working on? Yeah.
I like that you started with bringing us closer to the reality, because I think overall we could divide people, and we are not talking now about decision makers or those that are part of the decision making bubble, because whenever I talk to people and they hear where I work and what we do, I usually get two types of responses. One is that the one that you just mentioned, but isn't it already done?
Mm.
And like things are much better, progress was achieved. And then the second group of people, their response can be, oh yeah, that's huge. I'm seeing so many people smoking or using all of the new and emergent products. And then I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I try to if we look at the Western world over the last, well, basically starting from 90s, the world recognized that tobacco epidemic is huge. People are dying prematurely. And there was change in perception that happened, I think, for various factors, and we could maybe discuss it later. And that change in perception was to now we can confidently say that most of the surveys that are done in the Western world show that general public knows that smoking kills. And it's incredible that we started with tobacco being discovered in Latin America and brought to Europe and was only available for elites and very rich people. And then it was still over the centuries something that was rather available for rich people, and something that people were, the gentlemen clubs, they were gathering, smoking indoor, and then people again making money out of it by selling it. And then again, this is just my brief understanding of what happened. The wars, it was huge for the tobacco companies. That's how they moved to a mass scale of production and sales, and especially the First and Second World War. And what I mean by that is that somehow cigarettes became part of the supply for soldiers. People who were already fighting and losing their lives, and it was made available to them. And then it's horrific what was happening, but there are companies who've profited from that. And in the modern day wars, still cigarette and products, there are attempts from the tobacco industry and companies to sort of give it as their way to support soldiers and those that are fighting. So that's how we move to the 20th century mass production, and that's how we face the reality of, let's say in some countries it was roughly half of the population. Mostly, of course, the prevalence was much higher among men back in 60s, 70s. Things started changing in 80s, 90s, and more women started smoking. And that's where, yeah, let's say roughly half of male population was consuming tobacco. And it overlapped this massive advertisement on TV, radio, and this, I say iconic because it's hard to believe that it was happening. Iconic advertisements where doctors were telling you like, actually, if you want to lose weight, it's good for you. And this was one of the ways to attract women to smoking, or just saying, well, it's actually not harmful. And it sounds so surreal, but that's what was happening. That's the reality that we had not that long time ago, let's say 60 years ago, right? So some of our the grandparents' generation probably remember those times. So since then, I think the major thing why the perception started to shift is the court case in the US in 50s, when the industry documents revealed that the tobacco industry knew that smoking causes cancer. Again, this sounds to us, well, yeah, of course, tobacco and smoking causes cancer. But if we just try to forget that we know this information and try to imagine that we live in a world where everyone smokes, everyone, it's available to everyone, that's what everyone does. I want to compare it to something, but just imagine a world where we don't know that it causes cancer. And then, of course, there were scientific evidence, independent studies, research that was showing that tobacco causes cancer, but tobacco companies were denying it. And there are those clips on YouTube that you can still find where top executives of big tobacco say that no, smoking is not causing cancer, but then their internal documents show that they were lying. And since that moment, I think it was the turning point. And the perception over the last, again, probably like 50 years, 60 years, switched from people thinking that, or, well, being confident it doesn't cause cancer. Now, like, no, it became a common knowledge. So there are not disagreements. And it's a huge achievement. It's a huge progress because, again, if we just compare with alcohol, it wasn't until very recently that WHO published the report, and there were so many media articles saying that, yes, alcohol causes cancer. So I think if we compare to that, I think if probably the surveys, I haven't looked into that, but I do suspect that surveys were among the general public that ask people if you think that alcohol causes cancer and that there are moderate level of consumption is not as safe as we used to believe. It takes time. So that's why I think we are somewhat in the middle when we talk to people and try to understand their perception. Like, is it a done deal? Because on the one hand, now everyone knows that it kills.